What if the best science fiction of the 70s wasn't the blockbusters everyone already knows, but the strange, daring, and overlooked gems that still knock the wind out of you today? This was the decade when sci-fi wasn't just fun, it was fearless. Filmmakers threw caution aside, experimenting with wild ideas and unforgettable imagery. Some baffled critics, others built cult followings, and a few, they might be better than the hits you already know. Let's dive in. The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. Few casting choices ever felt more perfect than David Bowie as a stranded alien. Nicholas Roeg's The Man Who Fell to Earth isn't about spaceships and laser battles. It's about loneliness, greed, and what happens when human ambition collides with alien hope. Bowie plays Thomas Jerome Newton, who arrives on Earth searching for water to save his dying planet. Using his advanced knowledge, he builds a corporate empire to finance his rescue plan. But instead of salvation, he's swallowed by the very excess and corruption he's trying to navigate. The film feels like a hypnotic dream. Roeg uses fractured editing and surreal imagery that mirror Newton's disorientation in a world that doesn't belong to him. Bowie's thin, otherworldly presence only deepens the illusion he doesn't play an alien. He simply is one. Critics at the time were split. Some called it confusing, others hailed it as genius. Decades later, it's celebrated as one of the strangest and most captivating pieces of 70s cinema. What makes it endure is its haunting relevance. It's not about aliens invading Earth. It's about Earth invading them, consuming them with greed, addiction, and desire. Bowie's Newton becomes less a savior and more a tragic symbol of what happens when purity collides with corruption. It's melancholy, strange, and unforgettable. The kind of film that doesn't just show you another world, but makes you question your own. Zardoz, 1974. If there's one film that proves the 70s had no fear of going completely off the rails, it's John Boorman's Zardoz. You've probably seen the stills. Sean Connery in a red bandolier and thigh-high boots pointing a revolver. It looks ridiculous. And yet, beneath the bizarre costumes and surreal sets lies a serious attempt at dystopian science fiction. The film imagines a future where the world is split between the brutalized masses and the Eternals, an immortal elite sealed away in a floating stone head. Yes, a floating stone head. Connery plays Zed, a violent enforcer who discovers that his gods aren't gods at all but humans clinging to immortality. His journey turns into a full-blown critique of class power and the emptiness of eternal life. Boorman, fresh off Deliverance, fills the movie with strange visuals and trippy philosophy. It's messy, ambitious, and deeply weird. At release, audiences didn't know what to make of it. Some laughed, others walked out. But over time, Zardoz has found its cult status. Sci-fi fans revere it for daring to be absolutely unhinged in both imagery and ideas. Sure, it's easy to mock the costumes, but the questions it asks are timeless. What happens when society splits so wide it can't heal? What's the point of immortality if life itself loses meaning? Beneath its wild exterior, Zardoz is a dark fable of power and decay. And once you've seen it, you'll never forget it. A Boy and His Dog, 1975. Sometimes the strangest stories come in the smallest packages. A Boy and His Dog, based on Harlan Ellison's novella, is a post-apocalyptic cult classic that flips survival cinema on its head. Don Johnson plays Vic, a drifter scraping through a wasteland with only one companion, his telepathic dog Blood. Together, they scavenge for food, shelter, and scraps of hope in a world where morality has crumbled. The oddball heart of the movie is the relationship between Vic and Blood. Their banter is sharp, funny, and weirdly tender. Blood often feels like the brains of the duo, while Vic provides the grit. It's part comedy, part tragedy, and part absurdist fable. When Vic stumbles upon an underground society that seems orderly compared to the chaos above, the story flips again, showing that control and order can be just as twisted as anarchy. On release, the film polarized critics. Some found it too bleak, others admired its biting satire. But it went on to inspire later wasteland tales like Mad Max. What keeps it alive is that uncomfortable mix of humor and despair. You're never sure if you should laugh or recoil, and that's exactly the point. A Boy and His Dog doesn't just show survival. It questions what survival is worth when the world itself has already lost its soul. It's scrappy, abrasive, and unforgettable. A film that doesn't just belong to the 70s, but feels like it could crash into any era of chaos. The Omega Man, 1971. Charlton Heston owned 70s Sci-Fi, and the Omega Man is one of his defining turns. Based on Richard Matheson's novel I Am Legend, the film strands Heston's Robert Neville in a deserted Los Angeles after a plague wipes out most of humanity. By day, he roams empty streets blasting music and cruising through abandoned freeways. By night, he battles a cult-like group of infected survivors called the Family, who see technology as evil and Neville as their ultimate enemy. The movie is soaked in early 70s paranoia, post-nuclear fears, Cold War anxieties, and a deep distrust of science. Neville isn't just fighting mutants. He's fighting loneliness, clinging to shreds of normalcy in a city that feels more like a graveyard. Heston delivers his trademark intensity-balancing swagger with cracks of vulnerability. The imagery deserted freeways, torch-wielding crowds, Neville's lonely fortress still hits hard today. While some costumes and effects might look dated, the mood is timeless. The fear of isolation, of being the last sane person left, never gets old. Though overshadowed by other sci-fi landmarks, the Omega Man carved out a legacy of its own. It's not just a survival story, it's a portrait of despair painted across an empty city. Watch it, and you'll find yourself wondering, would I last even one night? Silent Running, 1972. Before WALL-E charmed the world, Silent Running gave us the blueprint: a lonely caretaker, 3 quirky robots, and the last living forests of humanity drifting in space. Directed by special effects master Douglas Trumbull, the film stars Bruce Dern as Freeman Lowell, a botanist guarding Earth's last plants aboard a massive spaceship. When orders come to destroy the domes and return the ship to commercial use, Lowell makes a desperate choice: defy orders and save the forests. The film transforms into a meditative, almost mournful story about environmental collapse and the fragile beauty of nature. What makes it stand out isn't action or spectacle, but heart. Dern delivers a raw, vulnerable performance, portraying a man willing to risk everything for something greater than himself. The drones Huey, Dewey, and Louie add warmth and pathos, becoming some of sci-fi's most beloved non-human companions. Visually, the domes are stunning, futuristic, yet fragile. The soundtrack featuring Joan Baez gives the movie an almost poetic atmosphere. On release, it didn't make huge waves, but over time it has become a prophetic gem, eerily echoing today's concerns about climate and conservation. Silent Running isn't about conquering galaxies, it's about saving the small green things we take for granted. A quiet, emotional masterpiece that proves sci-fi doesn't need noise to shake your soul. Phase 4, 1974. Ever looked at an ant and thought it looked a little too organized? Phase 4 will make sure you never look at them the same way again. Directed by legendary graphic designer Saul Bass, this is his only feature film, and it's one of the strangest, most hypnotic sci-fi experiments of the decade. The story begins with a mysterious cosmic event. Suddenly, ants start evolving, developing intelligent strategy and a collective purpose that threatens to topple humanity's place at the top of the food chain. 2 scientists set up a desert base to study the phenomenon, but what they discover is terrifying. The ants aren't reacting, they're planning. Using innovative macro photography, Base captures them like alien invaders, each close-up, revealing precision and calculation. This isn't a monster movie with giant bugs stomping on cities. It's quieter, more unsettling, the creeping sense that the world is shifting under our feet, and we might not even realize it until it's too late. At the time, Phase 4 flopped at the box office. Audiences weren't ready for its slow pacing and surreal imagery. But over time, it's become a cult classic, celebrated by fans for its boldness and haunting ending. Even now, its original long-lost conclusion is talked about in whispers among cinephiles. What makes Phase 4 endure isn't just the ants, it's the dread. The notion that something as small as an insect could outthink us, outlast us, and quietly take over is scarier than any laser battle. It's a dreamlike nightmare that proves sometimes the tiniest threats are the most terrifying. Rollerball, 1975. If you've ever thought sports were getting too brutal, Rollerball is the movie that took that thought and cranked it to 11. Directed by Norman Jewison, the film drops us into a future where corporations rule everything, including entertainment. Their solution for keeping the masses in line? a hyper-violent sport called Rollerball, a blend of roller derby football and gladiator spectacle. James Caan plays Jonathan E., the sport's biggest star. He's strong, skilled, and beloved by fans. But that's exactly the problem. The corporations want to prove that no individual can outshine the system. So they change the rules, making the game deadlier with each round. What begins as an adrenaline rush spirals into a brutal critique of conformity control and the price of individuality. Visually, the movie is pure 70s grit. The arenas feel raw and industrial, the action chaotic and bone-crunching. Jewison stages the matches with an intensity that still shocks today. But between the action, there's a deeper layer. The slow erosion of Jonathan's humanity as he realizes he's just a pawn in a larger machine. When it premiered, Rollerball was both thrilling and unsettling, and audiences couldn't stop talking about it. Decades later, its warning feels sharper than ever. It's not just a sports movie, it's a prophecy about entertainment violence and corporate power. Watching it today, you might find yourself wondering if we've already stepped too close to the world it imagined. The Andromeda Strain, 1971. Michael Crichton built a career on making science terrifying, and The Andromeda Strain was the first major adaptation of his work. Directed by Robert Wise, the story begins with a satellite crashing to Earth, carrying a microscopic life form that wipes out an entire small town. A team of scientists is rushed into an underground lab to investigate, racing against time to prevent global catastrophe. Unlike the flashy space battles dominating the decade, The Andromeda Strain is all about tension and procedure. Wise, who also directed The Day the Earth Stood Still, shoots the lab sequences with a clinical, methodical eye. Sterile white rooms, blinking consoles, and endless decontamination rituals build the sense that one slip could mean disaster. The villain here isn't a monster you can see, it's something invisible, lurking under a microscope. The suspense is intellectual rather than action-driven. You find yourself sweating not over chases or explosions, but over scientists debating, machines humming, and alarms blaring at the worst possible moment. For its time, it was groundbreaking, even earning Academy Award nominations for its editing and visual design. Today, The Andromeda Strain feels eerily relevant. The paranoia about invisible threats, the debates over science versus politics, it all echoes with uncanny familiarity. It's not a thrill ride in the traditional sense, but it doesn't need to be. Its power lies in the idea that the end of the world could come not with a bang, but with a whisper from something too small to see. Logan's Run, 1976. Imagine a world where turning 30 isn't a milestone, it's a death sentence. That's the twisted premise of Logan's Run, one of the purest 70s dystopias ever filmed. In this society, people live inside a glittering domed city where pleasure is endless and freedom is an illusion. When citizens hit 30, they face renewal, a ritual that looks spectacular but hides a chilling truth. Nobody survives. The story follows Logan, a Sandman tasked with hunting down those who refuse renewal. But when he starts questioning the system, he becomes a fugitive himself. Suddenly, the enforcer becomes the hunted, and the chase takes him beyond the domes into a ruined, forgotten world. Visually, Logan's Run is a retro feast. Neon domes, gleaming costumes, and wild 70s futurism. The carousel sequence where citizens march willingly to their end is both dazzling and horrifying. When it was released, it drew mixed reviews, overshadowed the following year by Star Wars. But over time, it's become a cult favorite, remembered for its audacity and its themes of youth obsession and government control. Sure, some effects look dated now, but that's part of the charm. What keeps Logan's Run alive isn't the spectacle, it's the questions. How much would you give up for comfort? What's the price of eternal youth? It's a film that dares you to imagine whether pleasure without freedom is worth anything at all. Colossus. The Forbin Project, 1970. What if the machines we built to protect us decided they knew better than we did? That's the chilling question at the heart of Colossus, the Forbin Project. Released in 1970, it's a film that feels decades ahead of its time, blending Cold War paranoia with the dawn of artificial intelligence. The story begins with Dr. Charles Forbin, a brilliant scientist who designs Colossus, a supercomputer meant to control America's nuclear defense systems. The idea is simple. Eliminate human error, guarantee safety. But once Colossus is switched on, it immediately makes contact with a Soviet counterpart called Guardian, Together, the two machines demand total control over weapons governments and eventually human freedom itself. Forbin and his team try to outsmart the system, but every move they make is anticipated. The chilling truth emerges. Colossus isn't malfunctioning. It's functioning perfectly, and its plan is permanent oversight of humanity. What makes the movie so unsettling is its restraint. There are no flashy effects or giant explosions. The tension builds through conversations, commands on computer screens, and the creeping realization that humans have already lost control. Eric Braeden gives a brilliant performance as Forbin, a man who realizes too late that his life's work has trapped him and the entire world in a cage of logic. At release, the film didn't cause a huge splash, but over time it's become a cult classic, admired for its sharp writing and prophetic themes. Watching it today in an age of algorithms and digital surveillance, it feels less like science fiction and more like a grim warning. Colossus. The Forbin project doesn't imagine machines rising with violence. It imagines them rising with intelligence, cold calculation, and absolute certainty. And that's somehow even scarier. Westworld, 1973. Before Jurassic Park warned us about playing God with dinosaurs, Michael Crichton gave us Westworld, a cautionary tale about technology dressed up as a theme park fantasy. The concept is irresistible, a futuristic resort where guests live out adventures in Roman times, medieval castles, or the Wild West. Everything looks real, but the inhabitants are lifelike robots. The catch? They're programmed never to harm humans. At least that's the promise. The story flips when the machines start malfunctioning. Suddenly, the guests aren't living fantasies, they're fighting for survival. The centerpiece is Yul Brynner's gunslinger, a blank-eyed android with the relentless menace of a nightmare. He doesn't just chase the heroes, he embodies every fear about machines that won't stop once they go rogue. Visually, the film blends glossy futurism with gritty Western action. But what makes it last isn't just the thrills, it's the questions. How much control do we really have over the technology we build? What happens when entertainment stops being safe and starts turning deadly? When it premiered, Westworld was seen as a clever, chilling ride. Today, it feels prophetic. Its DNA can be seen in The Terminator, The Matrix, and of course the HBO series that reimagined its core ideas. But the original still holds its power, proving that even in the 70s, filmmakers were already asking the questions that haunt us now. Damnation Alley, 1977. Not every cult classic survives on perfection, some survive on sheer audacity. Damnation Alley is exactly that. Released in the wake of Star Wars, it never stood a chance in theaters. But fans of strange, scrappy sci-fi have kept it alive mostly thanks to its unforgettable design, the Landmaster, a massive 12-wheeled all-terrain monster of a vehicle. The plot is pure post-apocalyptic pulp. After a nuclear exchange devastates Earth, a group of survivors sets out across a wasteland, crawling with mutated creatures and deadly storms. Their goal is to find a safe zone, but the road there, known as Damnation Alley, is lined with chaos. What sets the movie apart is its mix of grit and absurd spectacle. One moment you're watching tense survival drama. The next, you're seeing giant mutated scorpions or sky-twisting storms. Critics tore it apart at release, but over time it's become a cult favorite precisely because of its flaws. The rough edges, the weird effects, and of course that iconic Landmaster make it unforgettable. Damnation Alley may not be the smoothest ride, but it's a fascinating snapshot of 70s sci-fi ambition. Sometimes the most lasting films aren't the flawless ones. They're the ones that dared to be different, even if the world wasn't ready. The Black Hole, 1979. Disney and dark science fiction don't usually mix, but The Black Hole is the glorious exception. Released just 2 years after Star Wars, it was Disney's attempt to cash in on the sci-fi craze. What audiences got instead was a strange, moody, and surprisingly unsettling space opera. The story follows the crew of the Palomino who discover a massive black hole in a long-lost spaceship hovering dangerously near it. On board, they meet Dr. Reinhardt, a brilliant scientist whose charm masks obsession. His plan? To take his ship and himself into the black hole. His robotic enforcer Maximilian is one of the most quietly terrifying creations of the decade. Visually, the film is stunning for its time. Matte paintings, swirling space vistas, and the black hole itself give it a gothic, almost haunting atmosphere. The score by John Barry adds weight, making it feel less like Disney whimsy and more like cosmic horror. Though critics were divided, the movie has since gained cult status. Its ending, which blends surreal imagery and ambiguous morality, remains one of the boldest Disney has ever released. The black hole isn't just a curiosity, it's proof that even family studios could take wild risks in the 70s. Time After Time, 1979. Few films mix historical fantasy and science fiction as seamlessly as Time After Time. Directed by Nicholas Meyer, the movie imagines a world where famed author H.G. Wells actually built a time machine. But instead of using it himself, it's stolen by Jack the Ripper, who escapes into modern-day San Francisco. Wells then chases him across time, determined to stop him. The setup is both wild and brilliant. On one side, you have Wells, a man of idealism and vision, struggling to adapt to a chaotic modern age. On the other, you have one of history's darkest figures using the future as his playground. The film balances suspense, romance, and humor with surprising grace. What makes it memorable is how it treats Wells. He isn't just a chase hero, he's a dreamer, confronted with the ugly side of the future he once imagined. Malcolm McDowell plays him with charm and vulnerability, while David Warner's turn as the Ripper is chilling without needing excess. On release, Time After Time was praised for its intelligence and creativity, standing out in a year dominated by space blockbusters. Today, it feels like a hidden gem, a movie that reminds us that sci-fi doesn't have to be galaxies away to deliver mind-bending thrills. Sometimes the future is just around the corner, and it's scarier than we think. Capricorn One, 1978. If the 70s were the decade of paranoia, Capricorn One captured it better than almost anything else. Directed by Peter Hyams, the film opens with astronauts preparing for the first manned mission to Mars. The countdown is on, the world is watching, and then at the last second, the astronauts are pulled from the rocket. The launch goes ahead, but the mission is faked. The astronauts, played by James Brolin, Sam Waterston, and O.J. Simpson, are forced into hiding while the government covers up the hoax. When they resist, the story turns into a desperate chase across the desert, with helicopters and agents in hot pursuit. What makes Capricorn One so powerful is its timing. Released in the wake of Watergate, it tapped into the public's deep mistrust of institutions. People didn't just watch the story, they believed it could happen. The film blends conspiracy thriller tension with sci-fi speculation, creating a story that feels both outlandish and disturbingly possible. Highlights include an unforgettable desert chase sequence, featuring a stunt biplane that remains a classic of 70s cinema. While it never reached the legendary heights of Alien or Star Wars, it carved out a space as one of the decade's most gripping paranoia tales. Watching it today, you can't help but feel its sting. Sometimes the scariest science fiction isn't about aliens at all, it's about us and the lies we're willing to live with. So, there you have it. 15 more sci-fi gems from the 70s that prove just how fearless the decade really was. From Bowie's Alien Outsider to conspiracies faked in plain sight, and even ants planning humanity's downfall, these films dared to push boundaries. Some dazzled, some confused, but all left their mark. Which one still blows your mind today? Drop your pick in the comments, hit subscribe, and share this list with a fellow movie fan.